The last words she ever spoke to her best friend were simple. "Don't worry, I'll be fine." Minutes later, she climbed into his car. She never walked through her front door again. Her silence was the first sign. Her absence was the second. And by the time police caught up to the man who offered her a ride, the truth was locked away in the trunk of his vehicle. This is not just the story of a crime. It is the story of a life interrupted, of a daughter and a teacher whose light was extinguished by someone who refused to let her go. Her name was Emily Sanders. Born on July 18th, 1997, in Columbus, Ohio, she was the kind of person who drew others in. Friends described her as magnetic, a young woman who laughed easily, listened deeply, and carried a warmth that made everyone feel seen. She grew up in a close family, the youngest of 3 siblings, raised in a modest brick home on the east side of the city. Her parents, Karen and Michael Sanders, worked hard to provide stability. Her father drove delivery trucks. Her mother worked as a nurse. Emily was the one who softened the edges, who wrote birthday cards with little poems, who decorated the fridge with doodles and notes. By the time she reached her 20s, Emily had found her calling. She loved children, their honesty, their curiosity, the way they lit up when they learned something new. After years of late-night studying, she graduated from Ohio State University with a degree in early childhood education. At just 25, she was already working as a preschool teacher at a small learning center downtown. Parents trusted her. Kids adored her. Co-workers admired her patience. She would crouch to their level, smile, and say, "You're doing great. Keep going." Her mother once said, Emily wasn't just teaching kids their ABCs. She was teaching them kindness. She believed in making every child feel loved. Emily lived in a 2-bedroom apartment near downtown Columbus with her best friend, Rachel Lopez. The two had met in college, bonded instantly, and never looked back. Rachel described Emily as the sister I never had. They spent evenings cooking, watching crime shows, joking about how they would one day solve mysteries themselves. They planned trips they never had time to take, scribbling ideas onto sticky notes on the fridge. Nashville, New Orleans, California. Emily was grounded, responsible, careful, which is what made her sudden disappearance all the more alarming. She first met David Miller in the spring of 2021. He was a cousin of a co-worker, introduced casually at a backyard barbecue. David was 32 with an average build, neatly trimmed beard, and quiet demeanor. He told her he worked in IT, that he was single, that he lived in Westerville. At first, he seemed unremarkable, polite, reserved, a man who blended into the background. Rachel would later recall, he wasn't someone you noticed right away. But he hung around. He always made sure to be near Emily. Over the next several months, David lingered at the edges of Emily's social circle. He offered to help her with errands, once fixed her laptop when it crashed, and made himself available whenever she needed a ride. At gatherings, he sometimes appeared uninvited, though never enough to draw suspicion. Still, Emily noticed small things that didn't sit right. He texted her often, sometimes late at night. He remembered details she barely recalled mentioning. What perfume she wore, the color of her nail polish. Once, after she changed her hair, he sent a message that read, "I liked it better the old way. It suited you more." Emily confided in Rachel, saying, "He's nice, but sometimes he gives me a weird vibe." Like he notices everything. Rachel shrugged it off at the time, telling her, "Then just don't answer him." Emily, always kind, didn't want to be rude. She thought ignoring the small discomforts was better than hurting someone's feelings. She never imagined that simple politeness could put her in danger. On Friday, September 16th, 2022, Emily and Rachel went out for drinks with colleagues at a popular spot on High Street. It was the end of a long week. Music spilled from the speakers, glasses clinked, and for a few hours, Emily was carefree. They laughed, danced, and celebrated the start of the weekend. Around 11:45 p.m., Rachel decided to head home. Emily, still talking with friends, chose to stay for one last drink. Surveillance footage later showed Emily leaving the bar just after 12:30 a.m. She stepped outside into the cool night air, phone in hand. She spoke briefly to someone in the parking lot before climbing into a dark gray Toyota Camry. The driver was David Miller. Emily never made it home. By morning, Rachel was concerned. Emily always texted if she was running late. Her calls went unanswered. Messages stayed unread. By evening, her family was frantic. Karen Sanders reported her daughter missing. Police began searching. 2 days later, on September 18th, investigators spotted David Miller's car parked outside his small rental home in Westerville. They approached cautiously. When they opened the trunk, what they found would change everything. Emily's body, bound, bruised, lifeless. A blanket partially covered her. Duct tape, zip ties, and a small folding knife with blood on the blade lay beside her. Detective Mark Halpern recalled, "It's the kind of discovery you never get used to. A young woman who should have been safe, taken in such a brutal way, and all of it hidden in plain sight." Inside David's home, investigators found journals filled with obsessive entries about women. They uncovered internet searches about kidnapping. They found surveillance photos showing Emily walking to her car, jogging in her neighborhood, even shopping for groceries. David hadn't acted on impulse. He had been watching her, waiting. The autopsy revealed Emily had been strangled. Bruises on her arms and wrists suggested a violent struggle. Prosecutors believed David had lured her into his car with the promise of a ride home, only to attack her once she was inside. When questioned, David denied everything. He claimed Emily had wanted to come over. He insisted her death was an accident. But his story unraveled quickly. Detectives traced his search history. How to restrain someone without leaving marks. How long before a missing person is found. They found receipts for duct tape and zip ties purchased days before Emily disappeared. Most haunting of all, they discovered a handwritten note in his desk drawer. "If I can't have her, no one will." As investigators dug deeper, David's past came into focus. He had a history of failed relationships. Former girlfriends described him as controlling, jealous, unpredictable. One woman revealed she had once taken out a restraining order after he followed her to work and left threatening notes on her car. Neighbors recalled women arriving at his house and leaving in tears. Yet none of this had resulted in lasting consequences. Complaints were dropped, cases dismissed. David had slipped through the cracks. Prosecutor Angela Morris later said, "What we saw was a predator hiding in plain sight. A man who knew how to manipulate, how to avoid detection." Until Emily, David Miller was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and unlawful restraint. His trial began on March 6th, 2023, at the Franklin County Courthouse. The courtroom was packed. Emily's family filled the front row, clutching photos of her smiling face. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture. A man obsessed with control who meticulously planned his crime. They presented the journals, the surveillance photos, the chilling internet searches. The defense argued mental illness. They claimed David suffered from delusions, that he believed Emily cared for him, that her death was the result of a psychotic break. They presented psychological evaluations, painted him as unstable, suggested he had lived in a fantasy world where Emily was secretly his partner. But the jury was unmoved. After just 9 hours of deliberation, they returned their verdict. Guilty on all counts. David Miller was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Emily's family, the verdict brought justice, but not peace. Her mother wept as she told reporters, "No sentence can bring my daughter back. But maybe her story can save someone else." In the months that followed, Emily's loved ones launched the Emily Sanders Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to raising awareness about stalking and coercive control. They partnered with shelters, spoke at schools, and lobbied for stronger protections for victims of harassment. Each year, on September 16th, friends and family gather at the bar where Emily was last seen. They light candles. They share stories. They remind the world that behind every headline is a life. A daughter, a friend, a teacher, a presence whose absence can never be filled. Emily's story is not just about tragedy. It is about the dangers we overlook, the red flags we brush aside, the way ordinary moments can hide extraordinary risk. She trusted someone she thought was safe. She accepted a ride home, and in doing so, she crossed paths with a predator who saw her kindness as weakness. Her life should have been long, her future bright. Instead, it ended in the trunk of a car, silenced by someone who believed he owned her. But Emily is not forgotten. Through her family's fight, through the stories shared, through the lives protected by advocacy in her name, her light endures. If Emily's story moved you, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Talk about the red flags. Talk about the changes we need. Let her story spark conversation, awareness, and maybe even prevention. Please like this video if you believe Emily's memory deserves to be honored. Subscribe to Evidence Uncovered for more stories that shed light on the hidden truths behind tragedy. And remember, every view, every comment, every share keeps these stories alive. Because victims are more than headlines. They are lives. Lives we must never forget.